Hello Anglophonians. Say, have you ever pranked somebody? And if so, what were the consequences? Why do I ask? Well, in today's story of Lucky Luke, we are dealing with the consequences of a prank, and it's Luke who's pranking somebody. And this story is called The Buffalo Creek Gold Rush. The story begins with Lucky Luke riding through the American West, singing "Whatever You Do." He again sings the song that he would later become known for, "I'm a poor lonesome cowboy." But do Americans do that? Sing about your life on the way to work? Something like, "I'm a poor employee at a huge insurance company with 3 mortgages to pay off." Or "I fry hamburgers at a big fast food chain, oh yeah." However, on his way, Luke passes a river where an old prospector has set up a camp. The prospector is completely exhausted and fallen asleep, and Luke comes up with a very stupid idea. He still has a small gold nugget with him and wants to play a prank on the prospector. He throws the nugget into the bowl used for panning for gold. His prank works. After the prospector wakes up, he immediately discovers the nugget. And that's where things start to go wrong. Luke would like to explain the prank to the prospector, but he doesn't want to listen. As Luke rides after him, he is shot at. It doesn't take long to arrive in the next town, and word gets out about the gold discovery at Buffalo Creek. Crowds of people are making their way. A typical gold rush begins. Luke is still trying to convince people that it was a joke and that there is no gold, but he's almost run over by the chariots. Luke wants to try again the next day, but things have already run their course. The gold seekers have built a town on Buffalo Creek, and hundreds of fortune hunters are searching the river. Luke tries to explain the situation, but is mistaken for an impostor and imprisoned. The city on Buffalo Creek is heading towards its own catastrophe. The story itself stands out a bit because Luke acts almost mean and careless. He should have known how greedy people are for gold, especially since this prospector had obviously been looking for a long time. That being said, the premise of the story gives Morris an opportunity to portray exactly this mentality of greed for gold in a parodic and satirical way. Even today, there are old ghost towns that tell such sad stories about broken dreams in the hunt for gold. The story was published in Spirou magazine from the beginning of 1949. At the time, as we last learned, Morris was in the United States. Accompanied by Joseph Julien alias Jijé and his family and the young comic artist André Franquin, they had now reached Mexico. Morris and Franquin stayed in a hotel at Mexico City and took many trips to the surrounding area, which led to the style of the Lucky Luke comics becoming increasingly realistic. In the beginning, Morris's research consisted of him copying the poster photos in various cinemas in the city or simply taking them with him. But then he traveled with Franquin on location and watched the real sceneries. For example, in the Buffalo Creek Gold Rush, there's a Baldwin steam locomotive that Morris discovered somewhere around Mexico City.
There we discovered these old trains with the track clearers in front of the locomotive like in the westerns. It was dirty and uncomfortable, but we were young, and that's just how it is when you like to travel.
In another panel, we see that the city that has emerged from the ground on Buffalo Creek also has a church, and Morris found the relevant models for this in Mexico that he was able to draw and integrate into the story. The same applies to the typical Western buildings with a large front and the buildings behind them. The fact that Luke ends up in prison rather quickly for alleged claim robbery is also due to history. But how did Morris's drawings come to Belgium? One could answer the question simply, by airmail. But it wasn't that easy back then, at the end of the 1940s. Postage for airmail was calculated strictly based on weight, and Morris had to make sure that such a letter did not become too heavy. So he did something completely unusual. He drew the comic on both sides of a sheet. In the Buffalo Creek Gold Rush, there was a mistake in the printing shop when the worker responsible for photographing the pages so that they could be printed into the magazine forgot to turn one of the sheets of paper. As a result, this one page didn't end up in the magazine, a mistake that wasn't corrected until years later when it was republished. So Morris improved his drawing style and found inspiration during his stay in the Americas. Franquin and Jijé also found inspiration, and Franquin would use this in the stories he later drew for Spirou. Jijé initially collected ideas, but upon his return from the trip, these ideas would lead to the development of a new comic series. The title character would also be a cowboy, but unlike Lucky Luke, it would be a serious Western. The name of the series would be Jerry Spring, and it would debut in Spirou magazine in 1954. So there you have it, the Buffalo Creek Gold Rush. Well, what can come out of a prank? But that's all for today. Until next time, surround yourself with nice people, stay safe, stay healthy, and see you